Anyways, everybody screamed and covered their heads and eyes and laid down on the ground, ready to accept their fate. James held the boulder as high as he could go, and just when it looked like he was going to bring it down and kill them all... No! Stop! Startled, but still holding the boulder, James looked down and saw Peter standing directly below him, massaging his throat. Eddie and Clara came right up to his side and looked directly up at James. They were waving their hands to get his attention. "You're about to make a huge mistake," cried Clara. "Jimmy, please stop," Eddie pleaded. "The team just wants to make it up to you." James stared at them for a moment or two, then threw the boulder aside. Eddie, Peter, and Clara gasped and covered their eyes and heads. Boom! Eddie, Peter, and Clara slowly opened their eyes, as did the team, except for the unconscious Curly. It turns out James had simply thrown the boulder to the side. He glared down suspiciously at Eddie, Peter, and Clara. "What do you kids say?" The three of them looked at each other with uncertainty before answering. "We helped them escape Area 86 and told them everything that happened," explained Peter. "They all regret treating you like crap because they now understand what it's turned you into." James groaned disgustedly and came down to their level, staring angrily into their frightened faces. "You try to trick me too! No! Honest, we swear!" Clara shrieked. "Jimmy, we care about you," said Eddie sincerely. "We used to be like you. We thought nobody cared about us. We thought nobody would ever understand what being an orphan was like." Hearing this, James's anger faded away on his face to be replaced with genuine surprise. These kids had no parents too? The team looked very surprised as well as they stopped cowering and started listening intently. "But we were wrong," said Peter sincerely. "In all the time we spent with you, you're the first person to genuinely care about us in a long time, and you've shown just how much you care about your team and the great lengths you went to try to save them, despite everything that happened between you guys." "You gotta love him for that," whispered Frank. "Shut up, Frankie," whispered Richard. "They only want to help, and so do we," said Clara sincerely. "We want to be your friend, Jimmy, and we want to be friends with all of them. And if you can find it in their heart to forgive them and forgive us for that incident at camp 5 years ago, we'll make sure you're never lonely or miserable again." Clara took a deep breath and lowered her voice. "Believe us, Jimmy. Believe us." James looked uneasy as he still was upset with the team. However, hearing this from Eddie, Peter, and Clara was a lot more reassuring, and besides, they stuck to him like true friends by aiding him in creating the antidote. Furthermore, they spoke with such sincerity. How could he not believe them? And the way they were looking at him said it all. I believe you." Everybody sighed in relief, but tried not to smile in relief in case James lost it again. Eddie, Peter, and Clara stepped back and looked to the team. "He's all yours," said Clara. The three of them went to revive the unconscious Carly, while the team slowly went to James, still a little fearful. Richard was in front, and he watched with caution as James slowly got to his feet and stared at them, no longer angry or bitter. "James, they're right," said Richard. "We're all to blame, and we are more than willing to make it up to you." "Why bother after I nearly killed all of you with a boulder?" said James miserably. "We don't care about that," said Christy reassuringly. "We understand your anger," said Pedro. "How can you possibly understand if you had any idea what I went through?" "Anger and resentment took hold of your senses," said Reginald. "It's not like you wanted it to happen. We still look to you as our leader," said Gary. "I'm not worthy to be your leader." "Yes, you are," protested Frank. "No, I'm not." James's voice got louder. "You wouldn't understand." "What wouldn't we understand?" Joey asked incredulously. "I'm not fit to live." "Yes, you are," protested Richard. "No, I'm not. This is not what Arthur would have wanted." "Arthur's gone!" James bawled uncontrollably. His breath blew them backwards, and it took a lot of effort for them not to fall flat on their backs. Even Eddie, Peter, and Clara were surprised by these words. Unknown to them, Carly was beginning to stir. "Arthur's gone," James said tearfully. Hanging his head, James sat down, plopping onto the sand. The force of him hitting the ground raised everybody several feet in the air, but it didn't bother them. They all looked at James with pity as he covered his face, as tears streamed out of his eyes. "What else do I have to lose, guys? My father was murdered 3 months before I was even born. My mother died in a car crash when I was 8 years old. I lost my godfather and uncle when I was 12. And now I've lost Arthur, the only other surrogate father in my life." "Wait, doesn't James have a step-uncle?" asked Joey. "Shh, he'll hear you," said Gary. "Up until the day Arthur died." Around which time Carly and I immediately started having problems. "I just didn't realize what little meaning my life has. Perhaps she's better off not knowing me." "You're all way better off without me." "That's not true," cried Richard. "Do you hear me?" James shrieked. "My life isn't worth anything." With that, James buried his face in his arms on his knees and started bawling his eyes out loudly. Tears began streaming down the faces of everybody else. Even Carly, who had now regained consciousness, was crying, but everybody was too focused on James at the moment to pay any mind to her. It was so sad to all of them, not just to see a very big, strong man like James crying his eyes out the way he was, but the way he was saying everything was absolutely heartbreaking. 4 months of depression and anger boiling up inside of James had finally taken a toll on him. After nearly a minute of hearing him cry, Richard couldn't take it anymore. If they were ever going to make things right with James again, now was the time. Wiping the tears from their own eyes, Richard and Christy came up close to him and gently tapped his hip. "James? Jimmy, can we come up and talk to you?" Realizing what they meant, James lowered a giant hand and allowed Richard and Christy to stand on it. Then he lifted them up to his face as they gasped in shock. All over his tear-stained face, and especially in his eyes, they could now see all the raw, emotional pain James was going through, and how much he was suffering. Richard, however, persisted. "It's not your fault. None of this is your fault. It's our fault. If we hadn't been so pig-headed, if we had simply listened to your warnings in the first place, if we had been more open with you and had been there for you more since Arthur died, none of this would have happened. I don't even know why he made us count "Sirs at the Camp Ritchie," said James hopelessly, "especially me, since I was always asking him for advice. But now I can no longer turn to him because he's gone." "Yes, Arthur is gone. Physically." Richard pointed to his heart. "But he's still in our hearts. And as long as we remember him, his spirit within us shall never die." "Perhaps you're right, Richard, but Arthur was responsible for a lot of things. I don't think any of us would have met had it not been for Arthur. Or Francis." Richard gently touched James's face above his eye. "James," he said, "I probably should have told you this a long time ago, but I didn't want to say it in front of Arthur in case I hurt his feelings." "What's that?" James, not George, was curious. "Arthur may have brought us all together, but he sure as hell wasn't responsible for keeping us together. That was you. What are you talking about?" "You were made one of the head counselors because you were always a brave leader, and your leadership skills are better than most people I know. Even when we sometimes lost our way on long nature walks or got stuck in the lake without a paddle, I always had faith we would make it back to camp safely because you always followed your instincts and were too stubborn to quit. Following your instincts in the most unlikely of situations is a very valuable lesson to learn. And between you and me, Richard lowered his voice, even though I'd been as cowardly as Frankie sometimes, I've always felt braver when I'm around you. You're probably the bravest person I've ever met. I am? James was surprised. Of course! Christiana may have helped me become less clumsy, but I've become braver because of you, Jimmy. That makes two of us, Richie, Frank called from below. Evidently, the others could hear what was being said. James, Richard, and Christy looked down at them. Bravery isn't the only thing, said Frank. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have overcome my fear of the water. Though, of course, your method of doing so was Frankie, Joey said sternly. And to James, he said, I wouldn't have gotten into sports if it weren't for your inspiration. You and Carly made me feel more welcome among the campers, said Pedro. If any of you tell anybody this, I'll deny it, said Gary. But if it wasn't for going to school with James and Carly and watching their relationship blossom, I wouldn't know where to get good advice for picking up girls. I'm serious, he added indignantly when the others looked at him questioningly. And I must admit, added Reginald, that your friendships with every one of these people has made me realize there's more to life than being book smart or clever. Although James looked more surprised than touched by these words, they could tell on the inside that he was deeply moved. Christy started rubbing his cheek affectionately. And if it weren't for you and Carly, I wouldn't have plucked up the courage to start dating Richard, she admitted. What? Richard cried. You were afraid to admit your feelings to me? I thought I was the only one who had that problem. Yes, Richie, believe it or not. Christy smiled and winked at him. James couldn't help but grin at this as he wiped his eyes with a giant hand, but he tried to hide it when they turned back to him. The truth is, James, said Richard boldly, our lives are a lot better off with you in them. If it wasn't for your friendship, we would all be in different places right now. And I'm sorry I laughed at you, and I'm even sorrier I haven't been in touch with you that much for the past few months. One by one, everybody, except a semi-conscious Carly, said they were sorry. Then Richard looked at James with a serious yet hopeful expression. Can you ever forgive us, Jimmy? James looked and saw there were tears in Richard and Christy's eyes, but they were smiling hopefully at them.